Welcome back to the Southern Ladies Ramblings podcast. I'm Katie. You can find me on Instagram as a Southern Ladies Ramblings, on Ravelry as a Southern Ladies Ramblings, pretty much on every social media as a Southern Ladies Ramblings. Thank you for joining us today. If you like this podcast, hit that subscribe button and hit the like button. Thanks. All right, to get off to the start, what am I wearing today? This is my So Faded sweater. The pattern's by Andrea Mowry. I actually knit this a couple of years ago. It's like my favorite fall sweater. I made it with the short sleeve just above my elbows. I don't really like them longer unless I'm going to do a 3/4 length. But yeah, this is my favorite sweater. So that's what I'm wearing today. I want to start off with some of my finished objects that I've had since the last podcast. Since I didn't podcast since June, I've had a pretty good many. Most of them are designs that are available now in my Ravelry shop. My first one is this big, it's called the Tidal Wave shawl. It's using yarn from Vicious Yarn in 3 colorways. It has some texture, some garter, and a little bit of stockinette. Just enough to keep you interested. Really fun. It's a really big shawl. It's definitely bigger than my wingspan, and it's knit at a very loose gauge, so it's very squishy and warm and soft, but it's 3 fingering weight skeins, and I pretty much used everything but maybe 10 grams of each is what I had left of each of these, maybe a little bit more. My next finished object is the Night at the Fox sock pattern. This one is using Destination Yarn, colorway called Night at the Fox. I picked this up at Stitches United back in May, and I was contemplating what to do with the long color repeats, the way the stripes, it gives you this micro striping, but it also pulls. So in this type of yarn, it gets a really pretty texture, and it breaks it up, and it makes it really fun, and it really shows off those color so much. I really like this one. This one's one of my favorites. Another one is the Ragtag scarf. Basically, I had a bunch of socks yarn, and I didn't just want to, I had put some in my Cozy Memories blanket. I had put some in some other projects, and I just still had a bunch left. So this is a pattern that I designed using sock scraps. Start off basically like a toe-up sock. But I have different ways of putting the colors together. Also, because it is worked in the round, there are no ends to worry about. I just secured them, and there's some information in the pattern on how to do that. And this one's really fun. It definitely blocks up bigger than what you knit. I knit it at about 50 inches, and it grew to about 62. So it's pretty fun. This one is really easy, and it's great for car knitting, mindless knitting, anytime you need something but you want to use up some really pretty scraps. I'm also working on a fun one that's going to have purposeful stripes, and so I created this. This is a it's basically just a wrist warmer. I didn't put any thumbs in it, any thumb gussets in it, but this one's my next project, and it's using white birch fiber arts. Some minis I got at Stitches United, along with some yarn that I got in my knit crate box probably last year. So it's just a fun way to use up some really cute self-striping minis. So that's not a finished object, that's one of my whips. Or it's actually a half whip because one of them is done. Another part that I've worked on are these little treasure bags, or headphone bags, something to keep your charger cord in, just so it's basically cord keeper bags. So these have been fun, and they're really great little gifts, especially like at Christmas if you want to add some little treasure stuff for little kids. It's a fun little free pattern. I don't even know where I found it. I mean, it's basically like the bumblebee quilt, the beekeeper's quilt that I was working on. I'd made a whole bunch of little bee hexagons, and I was working these up, and I was like, why don't I make a little pouch? So I guess I need to write this one up. This one was a fun one. I've made a few of those. That's pretty much all of my finished objects. I do have some works in progress. I have a bunch of those back here. I have a few bags of those, and I'll get to those soon. Before I get to my works in progress, I'm going to show you a laundry fail. Beautiful sock that I made for my daughter last year. Bunky green color. She picked it out of the stash. Well, one accidentally got into the hot wash. So now, one regular one and one felted one. So yes, laundry fail. Have no idea how this got in there. And I normally use superwash wool, so I guess that was a little accident because I had been hand washing these. Now let's get on to my works in progress. This bag, I made this bag. This is a project. I like making project bags. So this bag holds Yarn Art brand yarn that my mother brought me back from Israel. And I am working on a center out, starts in the center, and it's going to be a square shawl, which my family wants to keep saying, how can it be a square shawl when it's on circular needles? So they think it's funny. But it's going to be a square shawl, and it started out this bright green, went to a little bit of heather to add it in. It keeps getting lighter and lighter, and it'll finally go to this brown color. So I'm like, this is basically mindless knitting, because all I do is increase every other round. It's super easy. I wanted the yarn to shine, and it's really fun. So that's what that one is. I'm using my, I forgot to say, I am using, let's see, I'm using my red lace Chow Goose. They are size 5 for this one. But yeah, I love my Chow Goose needles. These laces are just phenomenal because they don't have any memory to them, and they're really fun. And this bag, this is another one of my project bags that I've made. This one is painted fabric, and I stitched it. I even hand stitched it. Sorry, it's blowing out a little bit. Hand stitched it, things like that. This one has a new pattern design that I'm working up. So yeah, it's a really pretty teal turquoise yarn that I got from Knit Crate. And so it's going to be a fun little textured sock. And another pair of Chow Goose. I really, really, really like Chow Goose. I will say, once I went to those, I don't really ever want to knit with anything else. And then this one is my Brooklyn General bag. I got this when we went to Brooklyn General last year. Would love to go back. This store is really cool. This one is another design project. I'm using 2 colors of viscose yarn, and I really, really, really love this yarn. Using my Chow Goose interchangeables. These are really great because I started this project out on a short cord, and then I have added another section of cord to it right here, And that's why I really, really love the ChiaoGoo interchangeables. And then I'm using the ChiaoGoo, the stitch markers that came with my interchangeable set. They give you some of these yellow ones and the little pink ones, and they're really good, especially if you're working with doing yarn overs and things like that. Especially these yellow ones, they're a little bit bigger, so they don't, the yarn over doesn't come over on the wrong side. But this is a shawl pattern. I'll show you just a little peek. It's got a very interesting shape. It's different from what I've seen anywhere, and it's got a really pretty garter stitch, and then it gives you a stitch pattern here just to break that up, but it's got a center panel down the back, and that center panel is all texture and color, just two color work. It's worked with slip stitches, so you're only using one color at a time. It's once you've memorized the pattern, it's fairly easy to remember. So it's easy you don't really have to pay attention to it. It takes a little bit to remember it, but then once you get into it, it's not so bad. It's really easy, and it's a fun way to use up two really pretty skeins of fingering weight yarn. A little update about me. So what's been going on since I started the podcast in June. I now work full-time from home. I'm also publishing more patterns on Ravelry. I've added a baby sock, which I didn't have because I've already gifted those, a shawl, a new sock pattern, and a scarf pattern. So over the next few months, I've got a few more that are in the pipeline that are going to come in. So those are going to be fun. When I release them, they are free for 2 days, and they are also part of my pay what works pricing structure, which is there's the full price based on what the pattern, how long it took to do the pattern, what it really cost to produce the pattern. So, and that's what that price is. But then there's a coupon code for 20% off, 40% off, and 60% off on every single one of my patterns in my Ravelry store. So that's one of the things that I want to do from now on to make my patterns more accessible based on your income. I know that sometimes working for myself, you don't always have the money to buy a pattern that you want. You have to choose between yarn or a pattern. Well, this way I'm trying to make sure that the pricing structure is a little bit better, so that people can afford a pattern. So there's different price points, so you can choose which one is yours, and don't feel bad about that you chose to use that. It makes me feel good that people are taking advantage of the coupon codes, because then I feel like my patterns are more accessible to people, because I do put a lot of work in them. I like doing it. It's fun because I love to knit, so I really like making the patterns from things, and I've written down patterns for years so I can remake something. So now being able to publish the patterns for other people is really enjoyable for me. So I want to make sure that they're accessible to everybody. And if you like the pattern, figure out which price point works best for you and use that price point. I hope you like this podcast today, and if so, hit that subscribe button down below, hit the like button. It really helps me get found in YouTube's crazy algorithms that we all deal with on social media. I'm also, again, you can find me on Instagram as a Southern Ladies Ramblings, and Ravelry as a Southern Ladies Ramblings. And I look forward to coming back again and recording another podcast. I'm hopefully going to get on a more consistent basis, but I also will be doing my vlogs when we travel and things like that, when we visit interesting places.